Hi, I'm Tori, and today I'm going to be discussing Grave War by Kalayna Price. This book was published in 2020, and I listened to the audiobook narrated by Emily Durante. Now, as far as I know, this was supposed to be the final book in the Alex Craft series, and from a narrative standpoint, that kind of makes sense, but just based on where they left all the characters emotionally, I would not be surprised if there was a follow-up or some sort of sequel, something, because this did not feel very concluded. So I have reviews of all the other Alex Craft novels if you want to get a better idea for the story. It's kind of a fun, fantasy, dark, magical world with a sassy protagonist. So if that sounds like something that you would enjoy, go read all of the books in this series and then come back to hear my opinion on the final one. So emotionally, this did not feel like the conclusion of a series. I was really enjoying the beginning of this series, and all the books felt kind of episodic. We're solving a new mystery while things kind of build. And this one would have worked a lot better if it just kept being sort of episodic. It had that vibe to it, even though the things in the plot were very epic and were definitely ending. We had big things happening that were conclusions from a plot standpoint, but it didn't feel like the conclusion of a series when you were reading it. First of all, there's Alex's romantic life, which has been a big focus of the whole series. And this whole time, she has been kind of playing with the idea of romantically being involved with either Phelan or Death, and she's kind of bounced back and forth between them. She tried dating Death, and that took a few books before we figured out, she's got a lot of room for emotional growth. She doesn't quite know how to have a healthy relationship. So in the last book, she had just started dating Phelan, and they were going to try to make it work as a couple. And then in this book, they were separated into separate dimensions through most of the story. More than half the story, they were in separate places. Then they got together, had sex, it rained flowers, and everything was fine. And that does not feel true for Alex. She's the kind of person who she'll start out in a relationship and it'll seem great, but then she'll realize she has a lot of baggage and a lot of things she needs to work on in her personal life before she can have a healthy relationship. And so it didn't make any sense that they just kind of swept her relationship with Phelan under the rug when there would be a lot of things that she would have to work through to make it successful. It felt a little bit like something I call Gilbert Blythe syndrome from the Anne of Green Gables books. You spend all this time getting to know this person you think is going to be an amazing love interest. They finally get together, and then he just kind of spends the whole time standing in the corner saying, "Oh, good job, dearest. I support and adore you." And you just kind of lose all the things that made you think that they'd be a good couple in the first place. So I was really disappointed by the whole treatment of their relationship. And with all of this stuff to work on, we have her jump to, "Oh, I'm going to be your consort, and we're going to make this huge commitment to each other. And because I made a commitment to Fairy, now all of my commitment issues are suddenly solved, and I'm happy to commit to you." And they were not in a place for that. They had just gotten together. It made no sense emotionally for her to commit to this, and I feel like that would end very badly down the road. It didn't feel true to Alex at all. One thing that has progressed well over time is that Fairy is much less intimidating. In the first book, it was absolutely terrifying. It was this horrible, really tricky, manipulative place, and now it feels like we're much more capable of surviving there. And Alex has the tools and the knowledge to survive there. It feels comfortable. And it was interesting to see her become the High Queen. I was kind of figuring she would end up ruling Fairy, but I assumed it would be that she would use her plane weaving powers to kind of rebuild Fairy. But no, she just kind of inherited the throne. It turns out her dad was king all along, and he just passed the throne on to her, and now she's going to be High Queen in secret. And I was hoping that she would just completely change the way Fairy is run. And she did to some extent. She made it better for independence. But the main court structures still kind of exist, and I really wanted to see more of a complete change in the dynamics of how it was run. And just the way all of this was handled makes me think that Kalayna Price has to be planning a spin-off series, because so many things were left undone. There's still so much more room for work in Fairy. Alex's relationship with Phelan just could use so much more work. And then there were characters whose arcs we completely dropped. There was the Barghast. We still haven't quite figured out what his curse is or what's going on with that. And then the troll who kidnapped Alex, he seemed like he had a lot more growth. He was following somebody who was unreliable, and he needed to, realize his mistakes, and then he could, it felt like he was a character who we could have seen develop a lot more, and he just kind of disappeared partway through the story, and we didn't see him again. it just felt like everything was so rushed, and I really want to see a spin-off series. Maybe I would almost say it would need to follow a different character, but Alex and her personal life were so emotionally underdeveloped. I feel like now we almost need to see her saying, wow, I just became high ruler of this place and committed to a relationship I am not remotely emotionally ready for. Let's think about this. So I'm hoping that this was the conclusion of this series, but then there will be another series that also just kind of goes into Alex's follow-up to this story, because she really has a lot she still needs to learn and change, and just more needs to happen.